Hi there. Today, as I'm recording this, December 19th, 2023, today a Minnesota State Commission on Seals and Flag Design came up with a new design for the Minnesota State flag that should take effect or is supposed to take effect next year, May 11th, 2024. That's the anniversary of Minnesota statehood. If you've seen the title, if you read the title, this video is a case for the Minnesota state flag. That's this Minnesota state flag right here. I haven't always been opposed to changing the flag. I was very much for it for a long, long time. Before I get into all of that and get into the whole history of why I changed my position and why I think this is a good flag that should be kept, remain, and let me go into my own personal history and connection with all of this. I was born in Minnesota, lived there for about 50 years. When I was a kid, growing up, going to school there, I developed an interest for flags, flag design. The home set of encyclopedias, the F volume, I looked through that all the time, looking at all the different flag designs and everything. When I was a kid, in elementary school, my mom helped me sew this together. I designed it. This was my family flag. 6-pointed star. There were 6 members of my family. I must have liked the colors red and yellow, and then a J was the initial of my family's last name. Interest in flags, flag design, graphic design. There's the drawing that I did probably in high school of all the dimensions and everything for that flag. Interested in history, geography, politics at the time. Nowadays, well, I kind of detest and hate politics. May not be too strong of a word. But again, going back to the flag, I was always interested in flags and flag design. In 1989, just not long after I was left high school, an article showed up in the St. Paul Pioneer Press. I still have this today. There's an image of this Minnesota state flag here and a proposed design by a gentleman by the name of Lee Harold. He wanted to change the flag, simplify it, make a better design, and there was a case for it. I think there's a case for it today, a simplified design. But I've changed my mind over time from then. But back then when I saw this, oh yeah, I got to work. I started designing stuff. There's one of my designs that I came up with. Another printout of it there. And then I also worked on variations on the state seal using the flag design, incorporating that into that. And I was all in and had been for years and years and years. But times change and views change and opinions change. And one of the reasons for changing the flag is the imagery or the complexity, I should say, of the state seal. That was the reason way back when. A lot of stuff going on here. It all has meaning, and I hope to get to all of that and explain all of that as I go through this. But seal was too complicated, so the idea was you get rid of that and then you simplify the flag. But the most recent commission that came up with this new flag, they also came up with a new seal, because there are those that find the Minnesota state seal offensive or racist or problematic. There are issues and concerns with the Minnesota history and treatment of Native Americans and how it's depicted on the seal. Well, the seal was adopted when the state when the territory was formed. Before Minnesota was a state, it was the Minnesota Territory. Became a territory 1849. Had to check my notes there. 174 years ago, they needed an official seal. When they had any kind of document, they passed a law. When the governor signed something, they had to have an official seal to put on there, so they had to come up with a design. And so they created something based on what they knew, what represented the territory at the time. There's a farmer plowing his field. There were pioneers coming in and farmers, and there's a Native American on horseback. He's riding towards the west and towards the setting sun. That was the nature of the territory at the time and the nature of history. not just Minnesota history and not just American history, that's world history. And there were bad and nasty things that happened, and this represents to a lot of people a lot of those bad, nasty things. But like I said, they've been going on all around the world, everywhere around the world, throughout all recorded history and before that, for all kinds of reasons. Between like people that were alike, people that were different, and for all kinds of reasons, bad reasons, greed, envy, power, lust, love, politics, religion, atheism, you name it. If there's an ism, there was a reason for people to do bad things to other people, and you can't open up a history book without finding those things in there. It's part of the nature and the progress of history. Hopefully our perspective in a modern era looks back and we say, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. But we can't look back at history if we erase all of our history. If we take down all the statues, remove artwork from the Capitol, remove things from textbooks, if all you find in your history book is all the good stuff, that's not history, that's propaganda. I think the people that want to change the flag for those reasons, they would agree with me on that. But you can't focus on just the bad things and remove them either. Because if you don't have the good things and you don't have the bad things, then you don't have anything. It's the foundation of who we are as a people, as Americans, as Minnesotans, or whatever state you're from. So it connects us to what the territory and the early state of Minnesota was, and it should be kept alone, left alone. As far as the flag and the simplicity or the complexity of the design, well, let's get into that. Flag design. There's an organization called the North American Vexillological Association. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right when I consider myself a vexillologist. In layman's terms, that's somebody who likes flags. It's a flag nerd. Snob, connoisseur. Connoisseur is not a bad word. It's somebody who likes flags and flag design and what's good and bad about flags. And now they've come out with, and they've got 5 basic principles. I think people treat them as steadfast rules. I think they're more principles and design suggestions because you can kind of mix and match, and not every flag is all good or all bad. Actually, there are some exceptions. There are some really fantastic flags. And well, let's go through. Well, here, I'm going to take one example here. This is the state flag of Alaska. This is a fantastic flag. This was actually designed by a kid. He might have been a teenager, 13, 14, not sure exactly how old he was, but that's the state flag of Alaska. And let's look at our design principles. Principle number 1, keep it simple. Well, that is a simple design. It's the Big Dipper and the North Star. How do we know it's the North Star? Because, well, that's the context of where it is in the night sky. If you ask anyone in the Northern Hemisphere 5,000 years ago, and you ask them what this was, they could identify it. Not by the name, the North Star or Polaris or what we might know it, but they would know what it is, and they would know that it means north. Meaningful symbols. Well, that's principle number 2. That's guiding principle number 2, and that has that. Alaska is the northernmost state in the Union. Minnesota, the northernmost contiguous state. The 48 states that are all touching each other. But so that is meaningful and has symbolism. The night sky, land of the midnight sun, all that good stuff. Very simple, beautiful. Principle number 3 is kind of the same as principle number 1 in that, it's don't have more than 2 or 3 colors. Let's keep it simple. This has 2 colors. No lettering or seals. I think this is a direct reaction to so many state flags. There are a lot of state flags that they're just a blue field with the state seal on it. Some other colors. I'm going to go through all of these. Don't do that. Don't put lettering on it. I think there's exceptions to that rule. I think it's more of a guideline. Ideally, you come up with something like this, but I don't think you change something that's already been there for a long time. Rule number 5, be distinctive or be related. Those are kind of 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. This is very distinct. There's no other flag like this in any of the states, any other country that I know of. There's thousands and thousands of flags for countries and provinces and cities and you name it. That's pretty distinct and pretty recognizable as Alaska. Let me grab some. Okay, we're gonna. All right, we'll go through these pretty quick because I don't want the video to drag too much. But these are the examples that they would point to. That these are really good. There are all of these design principles, or most of them. And I think most people would say, yeah, that's a good flag. Tennessee right there. Arizona, this is beautiful. But a lot of these flags, they were not, they didn't wait 174 years, 130 years, the case of the Minnesota flag, before they said, hey, let's change that. These were right out of the gate or very early on as a state, or in the case of Texas. Texas was an independent country. California here, before it became the state of California, it was the California Republic. Short-lived, but it was an independent country with a very simple flag that was there from the very beginning. Ohio, distinct shape with the pennant shape going for it. Alabama, North Carolina, Hawaii, Arkansas, the North American Vexillological Association, number of years ago, they did a survey of flags, which are the best, which are the worst. I believe, if I remember correctly, the number 1 design that people liked in that organization was New Mexico here. Zia symbol, I believe is what it's called, was found on some pottery from some Indians that had lived there, and they used that as the symbol for the state. That's beautiful. That's right up there with Alaska. Colorado. Now this is one. Now originally, I just looked this up the other day. Colorado had a blue flag with the state seal in the middle, and somebody proposed a new flag just a few years in to statehood, and they said, oh, here, we've got it, not realizing there was already this other flag. This was the much better design, but they didn't wait 174 years, 130 years, whatever, before they said, hey, let's change that and start completely fresh. It was brand new with the state. Maryland, I think this is my favorite state flag. Kind of a little complicated, but boy, that's beautiful, and that's got a history that goes back pre-American Revolution and maybe even back further than that. Not a state flag, but Puerto Rico, we'll make sure I hold that up the right way. Puerto Rico, very simple, now this one, I'll get to, what was our rule? Be distinctive or be related. This is very similar to Cuba's flag, also in the Caribbean. Invert the colors here. Blue stripes with a red triangle, and you've got Cuba, but they're in the same region, same area. There's some commonality, common elements to both flags. Not a state as well here, but this is the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., based on George Washington's coat of arms. Very simple, not the whole coat of arms or anything like that. It's just the 3 stars and the 2, oh, that's a very nice flag. Again, not a state, but very nice. Now, then here's the flags that everybody thinks, and this is the thing that set me off, that made me say, oh, boy, these people are irritating me that want a new flag and they don't like the old flag. Not any of the stuff having to do with the seal, because there's understandable differences of opinion there. I can respect and all that. But there's a lot of people out there that seem to think that this flag is just the state seal on a blue field, and it is not. This in the middle, that's the state, from the state seal. It's not even the whole state seal. The rest of this, that's different. Anyway, I'm going to get to that in just a second. Here are, again, there's a lot of these. There are a lot of these, and we're going to go through them very quickly. You probably won't recognize them or identify them, except I'm going to tell you what they are. Kentucky. Vermont. There's some very small text on there that says Vermont. Excuse me. Pennsylvania. Any one of these, you take the seal off, it's just a blue field. indistinguishable one from the other if you don't know what that state seal looks like. New York, same thing. Oh, wait, here's one. We can tell what this one is, you know, because it's got the word Montana written across it. Again, I think this is the reason that they've added this rule, this guideline of no seals, no lettering, because this is what the tendency happened to be. Idaho, Great Seal of the State of Idaho, and then underneath State of Idaho, kind of redundant. South Dakota, the same thing. Seal of South Dakota, South Dakota. Now that's a different color blue. That's a lighter blue, different than a lot of these others. Darker blue. Minnesota, same thing. Lighter color blue, a little bit different. So that can stand out a little bit from the rest, but still not the best. North Dakota. Now this is not the state seal, but this goes directly back to the lineage of U.S. Army cavalry flags, regimental flags, and I'm going to get into that history in just a minute, but that is a direct copy from what a regimental flag, Army flag, cavalry flag would have been used in North Dakota. Nebraska, just the seal on blue. Michigan. New Hampshire. Maine. Connecticut, now that's not the whole seal, it's the shield from the, I kind of like this, there's a very distinct shape that you can kind of recognize. That one's pretty good, not too bad. Wisconsin, again, they put the seal on there, or the center part of the seal, and then big letters, Wisconsin, 1848. That was the other post on the Facebook that I saw that set me off. Somebody took this flag, they changed it so it said Minnesota, 1858, the year of Minnesota statehood, and said, let's put this on here and see how many people realize or recognize that it's different. Yeah, it's very different. This is not part of the seal. This is distinct and unique. This is not. Anyway, Virginia. Now this is a design, the seal and the whole thing, this goes back to the American Revolution, pre-Civil War. You got Kansas, again, let's put the name on there so we recognize it. Indiana, not the seal, but an emblem designed to represent Indiana. This one's a little bit better. Oklahoma, same thing. Not the state seal, Native American shield with the words Oklahoma. I believe originally it was just the shield and no name of the state underneath it, and they had to add this name so you would know what it was. So that's a pretty good sign that, probably should add something else to the flag to make it distinct. Louisiana, again, not the state seal, although the pelican is a symbol, the center of the state seal, but a very distinct shape. So you can kind of recognize that from a long ways away. South Carolina, again, not the state seal, the palmetto tree, the crescent moon, very distinct from a long ways away. You can identify it. And these symbols, the symbology, that goes back to the American Revolution, Fort Moultrie. They built a fort out of palmetto logs to defend against the attack from the British. Nevada, again, a little bit different, not the state seal, and up in the upper corner there. So from a long ways away, if you just see that up in the corner, you know that that's Nevada, because no other state flag is like that. All right. I'm getting somewhere with all this, but there's a lot of state flags very similar. Let's see, that's rule number 5. Distinctive or related. Those are all related for very specific reasons. You know, the time they were in, and we'll get into that. Massachusetts, not the whole seal, just part of this seal, center part, and on a white flag. So it's a little bit different, stands out a little bit more. It's not the only white flag, though. Illinois, like Oklahoma, they put the seal on there, and then they decided, hey, let's add the word Illinois underneath it so people know what it is. A little bit more distinct, and it's a little bit more simple design of a seal. Rhode Island, similarly, an element from the seal, the anchor, symbol of Rhode Island, very simple shape, 13 stars in a circle. So that's a little bit different, more identifiable, so you can kind of see the transition that I'm doing here from those flags that are pure just state seal on a blue flag to some that are a little bit more distinct. And as we get into this here, all right, there we go. Whoops. Wait a second. Oh, hang on. I've gone too far. No, I've done it. I've gone too far. Okay. Nope, we're going to do that. So I laid all these out so that I could kind of keep track of what I was talking about, keep my train of thought along with my notes here. State arm, state seal, not on blue, not on white. It's a color, this is called buff. I believe. This is the state flag of New Jersey. This is unique. Even if you took the state seal off of it and it's just the buff color, yellowish, goldish color, you could still recognize that this was New Jersey. That color, I believe, if I remember correctly, comes from uniform pieces from the American Revolution, from the officers like General Washington and whatnot. So that's got some history to it, and again, unique enough that you can identify it. Yeah, it's got the seal on there, but you can identify it from a long ways away. Washington State, same thing. No other state flag is green like this, so it's unique and identifiable. So just, we can't have a seal on there, it breaks the rules. Well, no, you can still identify it, and if you took George Washington, the state seal of the state of Washington off there, you would know that is Washington State up alongside all of the other state flags. Iowa. Now we're getting a little bit fancier. Simple. Keep it simple. That's the rule. Not the whole seal in the middle, and we've got the word Iowa. You could take the word Iowa off there, but if you took the eagle and the scroll off of there, that looks like France, doesn't it? So that's an example of one where I would say you need that on there to make it distinct from another country, and it is distinct from all the other state flags. Similarly, here you got Missouri. The state seal is in the middle, or the center part of it, surrounded by stars, red, white, and blue. Take that seal out of the middle, and it's still Missouri, so it doesn't matter whether the seal is there or not, so why not keep it there? You've got a framing device that makes it unique. State of Florida. If you took the state seal off of that, you'd have Alabama. Nope, it's Florida. The seal makes it identifiable as that state flag. Delaware, this is another really great example of a design. There's the state seal in the middle. There's the December 7th, 1787 on the bottom. And you take that off of there, you could still identify that as the state of Delaware. No reason to take that off of there. This is my favorite. As far as it's got the state seal on there. You can't have state seal. You know that's Wyoming, whether the state seal is there or not. So why not leave it on there? Very distinct. West Virginia, the same thing. So this is kind of like another category of flag. You've got those really, really unique and colorful and simple state flags, the Alaskas and the Texas and so on and so forth. These are kind of like, then you've got the those all blue, all one color with just the state seal in the middle, name on the. Then you've got these that are, state seal is on them, but you've got other elements there that make them unique. This is West Virginia. You got the white surrounded by the blue, and you can identify that that's West Virginia, whether it was the state seal or something else in the middle. And I squarely put Minnesota in this category. You've got the seal, part of the seal in the very center. Let me use this one, that's bigger. But then surrounding it, you've got other elements that are very distinctive. You can see these little flags back here. I can tell Minnesota's from all the rest there because of that white circle. Why is that there? Well, let's get into that. It didn't start that way. The first Minnesota flags weren't even official state or territorial flags. They were U.S. Army flags, and it evolved to this design. And is that the state flags evolution? Oh, okay. The Minnesota state flag evolved. It changed over time to become the flag that we have today. They didn't say, hey, let's make a new flag and throw out everything before. They just made little changes and alterations and combine different ideas to create what we have. And I'm going to give you an example of another flag that evolved. This one here, you might recognize this. This is the Union Jack. So this is the mother country, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, previously just the United Kingdom of Great Britain. They're the mother country. That's where the United States sprang from. They set up colonies in North America, and those colonies said eventually, yeah, we don't like where we're going, so we're going to set up a new country. The flags and the emblems from the United Kingdom transferred over to the flag of the United States. It evolved. That flag itself evolved, right? So previously it was England and Scotland. So the red cross here, that was England. The blue, the white cross, St. Andrew's cross, that was Scotland. When they ended up combining the monarchy into one monarch for both countries, they took the two designs and they put them together and they created a new flag. It evolved, it changed. When the United States was forming, 1775, I believe, they created what was called the Grand Union flag. 13 stripes, and up in the corner, no, not a blue field with 13 stars. It was the flag of Great Britain, the mother country. Now, 1776 rolls around and we declare independence, and the next year, 77, they said, yeah, you know what? Let's change the flag. Let's do something a little bit different. And this is what we get here. This is the Betsy Ross flag that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. 13 red and white stripes, so this is what it was, and it was the Union Jack up in the corner. They replaced this with a blue field and white stars, 13 white stars. A new constellation, I believe, is how it was referred to. But now, there was no defined pattern for the stars or that they should be 5-pointed stars. All bets were off. As long as it had 13 stars and 13 stripes, it was an American flag. And here's my example of that. This is the Battle of Bennington flag. So, an American flag that we know and love today, it's red, white, so on and so forth. This is white, red, white. So they're inverted, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pointed stars. So that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. You've got 7 pointed stars instead of 5 pointed stars. There are 13 of them, but they formed the arch in 76, the year of the Declaration of Independence. So there was no set pattern of how they should do things as far as the stripes and the stars. Just had to be 13 of them, and that was it. Then we gained our independence, we won the war, and the country started expanding, and they added Vermont and Kentucky, and so we had 15 stars. So they said, hey, I got a great idea. Somebody said, I got a great idea. You know, people are always doing that, especially when it comes to flags. Every time we get a new state, let's add a star. So there are, on this flag, 15 stars. Now, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but that's not 13 stripes. It's 15 stripes. So yeah, they decided they were going to add a star and a stripe every time a new state joined the Union. Well, that idea didn't last very long. Nope, because they were going to run out of room for stripes pretty quickly. So they said, hey, we're gonna roll this back. We're gonna flip flop. Remember, these were politicians making these decisions. So they went back to the 13 stripes, but then added a new star for every state that joined the Union. This is good. This is a cool flag. This is a 32-starred flag. It's kind of big, so I won't do the whole thing. But so Minnesota was the 32nd state, and it's got 32 stars on it. As was introduced in 1858, 59 would have been introduced the year following statehood, following 4th of July. I think that was the convention back then. That's the convention now. When a state it gets added to the Union, the following 4th of July, they add the star, create the new flag. Anyway, I was going to go off on a tangent there. I'm not going to. I believe this is 45-starred flag. 45, which was, I believe, 1901, early part of the 20th century. I have to count them again. So that's bought that one for, my brother was doing a period piece, and so I got that as a prop to hang in the background. So 45, and I'm skipping. There's a whole bunch of flags in between, again, every time a state joined the Union. And then you've got, this was the longest lasting flag up until the current flag. This is a 48-starred flag, and this one, So these are all like reproductions and made more modern flags. This one is actually, from the time period, the 48 starred flag. Up until 1960, when we added, Alaska and Hawaii, 58, 59. So 1960, we got the flag that we know and love today. And now the star pattern, of course, now it's set in law. This is the way that it has to be. Anyway, that was a kind of a long tangent there, but flags evolve. American flag, it's not the same as it was 100 years ago, so on and so forth, back through the century. And like I said, the Minnesota flag as well evolved through history. The first Minnesota flags were not state flags. It wasn't a territorial flag. They didn't have those back then. Some states did, but Minnesota did not. The first flags were regimental flags in the Army, Civil War flags. So Minnesota becomes a state in 1858. 3 years later, 1861, Civil War breaks out. Very early in the history of the state of Minnesota, Governor Ramsey was in Washington, D.C. at the War Department when the telegraph message came across that Fort Sumter has been fired upon. Civil War had started. Johnny on the spot, he says, hey, we volunteer unit to serve in the Civil War. So Minnesota was the first state after the outbreak of the war to offer troops to fight the rebellion and defend the Union and the whole thing. The first Minnesota regiment trained then at Fort Snelling. If you head to St. Paul, there's a big, tall obelisk monument with a Civil War soldier standing on top of it. That's a monument to the 1st Minnesota Regiment. So the 1st Minnesota, other regiments were raised and formed, trained at Fort Snelling, went off all over the country and fought in every major battle in the Civil War, including the 1st Minnesota at the Battle of Gettysburg. Maybe you've heard of it. It was a 3-day battle in Pennsylvania, north of Washington, D.C., in Union territory. Almost every other battle was fought in Southern and Confederate territory. This time the Confederates moved north, invaded the northern states. 1st Minnesota was there. They did a hard march on the first day to get to the battlefield. The second day, because they had done that hard march, they were kind of put in reserve. They were in back of the main line. The main line of Union troops, the center of that line, miscommunication or something, there were fractures in it and it was not going to hold. The Union general at the time looked out and he saw what was about to happen. Confederate soldiers were about to breach that line and totally engulf the Union forces. He saw that the 1st Minnesota was there and he called on them. He said, take those colors, referring to the Confederate battle flag that was coming across the field towards them. They did, in fact, capture that flag. It's still at the Minnesota Historical Society. It's not on display. It's back in the archive somewhere. But they captured that flag and they charged the line. They were outmatched, overwhelmed. The numbers of the Confederates severely overwhelmed the 1st Minnesota, but 1st Minnesota hit them so hard and so fast, they held them back. They held back the Confederates long enough, just a matter of minutes, matter of seconds maybe even, for reinforcements to come. If you go to Gettysburg today, there's monuments all over the place, but in the spot, in that field where the 1st Minnesota charged the Confederate line, held their own line, there's a monument to the 1st Minnesota there. They hold the distinction of having the highest casualty rate of any surviving unit in U.S. Army history. It was like 80% or something killed, wounded. And had they not held the line, the day would have been lost, the battle would have been lost, the war would have probably been lost. Confederates would have circled down and headed down to Washington, D.C., taken over the city, surrounded the city, forced a peace treaty, and we'd probably still have 2 countries today. The 1st Minnesota was responsible there. Again, other units performed valiantly and heroically all over the country throughout the Civil War. Now, if you head to St. Paul today, I mentioned that 1st Minnesota monument. That's not on the Capitol grounds. If head down to the state capitol grounds, you'll see a lot of different monuments. There's monuments to the World War I, World War II veterans, firefighters, Korea, Vietnam, so on and so forth. No monuments to Civil War veterans. Well, that's because the building itself is in a way a veterans memorial, monument to the Civil War veterans. The first time I ever took a tour of the state capitol, we were in the gallery overlooking the House of Representatives chamber, and they were describing all the different artwork and all the different symbolism, and I was quite a bit younger, and the answer might seem obvious, but to me it didn't, because there's a painting, presidential portrait, behind the speaker's chair in the rostrum there, and I asked the question, well, Minnesota became a state in 1858 when James Buchanan was president. Why is Lincoln's portrait there? It made sense to me that maybe James Buchanan, being the president when Minnesota became a state, would be the guy up there. But the answer made a lot of sense. 1860 was the first year that Minnesota was able to vote for president, and Lincoln was the first president they voted for. And of course, with the Minnesota link to the Civil War, and Lincoln is, of course, certainly very strongly linked to the Civil War and that period in history. So it makes sense that he's there. Around the Capitol, there's other elements and things that are related to the war. If you go into the governor's reception room, there are paintings on the wall, giant, beautiful paintings, and I believe they're all of Civil War battles, of Minnesota units fighting various battles in the Civil War, including the 1st Minnesota and their charge at Gettysburg. On the first floor of the rotunda, there are flags, U.S. flags, as well as regimental flags, the flags that were carried in battle, the flags that were used for ceremonies and whatnot. Those flags, they were blue, and they had the state seal painted on them. Now, they didn't need a lot of them. They didn't need to be that distinct from each other. That's where the convention for all these other flags that have the state seal on a blue field come from. There is a connection to the Civil War. These flags are all, there we go. Distinctive or related, they're all related through that history. Even those states that came after the Civil War, like I mentioned with North Dakota, that was a cavalry flag. That was a unit flag that ended up becoming a state flag. So there is a reason for state seals to be on all of these flags. Those state flags that are on display there in the rotunda, they had been down at the previous state capitol. The 3rd state capitol was opened up, and all of the flags and paintings and artworks that was down at the 2nd state capitol needed to be brought up. And as kind of a monument to Civil War veterans, all of the veterans who were still around and still alive, they came into St. Paul from all over the place. They marched those flags up from the 2nd capitol up to the 3rd capitol, our current state capitol, where I think they're still there, unless somebody's removed them. People are known to, remove things they find, offensive or distasteful or whatnot, for whatever reasons they have without anybody. Anyway, I digress. They were brought up there. One of those Civil War veterans there in St. Paul for the opening of the new Capitol was William Colville. Colonel Colville was the regimental commander of the 1st Minnesota Volunteers. When he was in St. Paul for all the festivities, he passed away. He received the honor, the distinction of being the first person to lie in state in the rotunda at the Minnesota State Capitol. 2nd floor of the rotunda, there's 4 statues of Civil War officers, Minnesota officers, including Colonel Colville. Again, there is this link to the Civil War flags, and the sacrifices made by Minnesota troops to save the Union, preserve the Union, and without preserving the Union, you wouldn't end slavery, you wouldn't give everyone the right to vote, and all of the fruits of that sacrifice may not have come to pass as they have. So that there's some good history there. Now, the Minnesota, what did I say, 1905, the third state capital. Now, they did have an official state flag at that time, a number of years earlier. 1893, Minnesota got its first official state flag. Chicago World's Fair was going to be going on, and the World's Fair organizers wanted to have state flags for all, however many states there were at the time, 45, I believe, if memory serves me. 45, 46, somewhere in there. For every state in the union, they wanted a pavilion with a state flag on display. Well, not every state like Minnesota had a state flag. And so they put out the call to state legislatures and whatnot and said, hey, send us a state flag. And states like Minnesota said, oh, we better get a state flag. So they held a competition, and there was about 20 submissions, and the winning design was basically this, almost this. It featured the state seal in the middle like this, maybe influenced by those Civil War flags. They would have seen them at the other state capitol. Current capitol wasn't open yet when this was going on. They might have seen those. They might have seen other flags around with the blue with the state seal in the middle. So that might have been an influence. I don't think there's any direct connection that anybody's made, but they certainly would have been exposed to it. But rather than just the state seal, they added the lady slippers, the state flower around the outside with some banners, the state motto. They told du Nord, Star of the North, northernmost state in the Union at the time. Year that Fort Snelling was established, 1819. I had to look that one up. 1893, the year the flag was adopted. Then they put stars around it. So there are 19 stars, and they form a larger star. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, didn't you just say a minute ago that Minnesota was the 32nd state? Well, why are there 19 stars? Well, because 19 plus 13, if I did my math right, that's 32. Minnesota was the 19th state to join the Union after the original 13. So like the American flag with the stars up in the canton and the blue, there's a star for every state. Again, not including those original 13. And so they are all represented. The topmost star, that one there, it's a little bit bigger than the other ones. That represents Minnesota. It's at the top. It's the northernmost star. It's the North Star State. So symbolically and graphically, they represent Minnesota. Not as well done as Alaska, but unlike many of these new proposals, all of these new proposals, I haven't viewed all 2,000 that they submitted, but you can't just throw a star on there. That's it's the North Star State. That's the one. This has a distinct graphic design that incorporates it in a way that it makes it the North Stars in the North Star State. Now you'll notice, so it's in the star pattern. Remember how I talked about how way back when in the 19th century and earlier, there was no distinct or there was no specified pattern that the stars had to be. There were a number of U.S. flags in which the stars up in the corner formed a larger star. Now, I do not know. This is pure speculation on my part. The designers of the flag would have been exposed to those, would have been familiar with those, and that's my guess as to where that came from. Now, it didn't say, it had Minnesota on the bottom, and there was a ribbon that came down, and but it wasn't blue. Well, part of it was blue, but not this part. It was a two-sided flag. So the side with the seal and all the stars was white. And the other side, now as I understand it, was just blue with nothing on it. And I just recently looked at the Wikipedia and it shows a graphic showing the seal and everything on the blue side as well. I'm not sure which is correct, but I do know one side was white, one side was blue. Not unheard of, not very common either. So this is I didn't show this one earlier. That's the state flag of Oregon. It's not an official flag, but it's got the state seal on it. State of Oregon, 1859, the year of statehood. Now the other side, well, this is what makes it unofficial. The state flag of Oregon, the official flag. I think this is still the case. Last time I looked, it's a different design on the other side. There's a beaver on the other side. and the state seal and everything else. And this, so it's a two-sided. The reason this isn't two-sided like the official flag, probably too expensive to produce. The Minnesota flag at the time when it was produced, two sides, two different colors, a little more complicated, a little more expensive to produce. And then checking my notes, 1957. Yeah, 1957. They said, hey, you know what? Let's form a commission, or I don't know how they came about it, but they said let's redesign the flag. This was the last time, major time that there was a major flag change, but they didn't throw everything out, start completely fresh, do something completely new. They took something they already had and they revised it and changed it up. They took the white side and they cut a circle around here. They changed the way that Minnesota was written. They got rid of the little ribbons on the bottom, but they cut it out, put a gold band around it, and then they put it on the blue side. So you got the blue from the one side and the white from the other side, all on the same side, and then both sides were the same. It evolved, it changed, it became what it is today through a process of evolution. That's the flag that we got today. 1983, there were revisions to the flag, more specificity as to what the design was. I think they changed some elements of the seal because of the controversy surrounding it and the Native American on horseback and things like that. So changes, and so it evolved and it changed. And well, I'm getting towards the end here. That's pretty good. I don't know how long this is, but yeah. So that's my history of the state flag of Minnesota, how it relates to other state flags, how it fits these design elements. Again, it's not all the state seal. You've got these other elements that mean other things that are connected to other things. The seal is connected all the way back to the Minnesota Territory, the Civil War, all of that. It's distinct. You can recognize this when it's up on a flagpole because it's not just the seal on a blue sheet. Now that's not to say, of course, that you couldn't make changes, have it evolve and become something simpler and still retain some of that history, ties to that history, have it evolve a little bit more. But that's not what they're doing. Changing the seal isn't for design reasons. It isn't because anybody thinks that the design is too complicated or anything like that. It's all for politics and all this other stuff. You know, we live in a world where Mary Poppins and the Muppets and Dr. Seuss and Charlie Brown Thanksgiving and Zippity Doo Dah and you know, Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima. That's all problematic. And you know, if you're going that far, and if all of those things are problematic and racist and offensive and all of that, then you know, anything you put out there that says that, oh, this is offensive, this is right, well, okay, everything seems to be, and you're not going to convince people because you know, you've got these things that are pretty benign, and you throw the same language and the same catchphrases, problematic and whatnot, at them. People are going to be opposed, and I'm opposed to it for that reason. You know, there's problems in our history, but again, it's part of our history, and in saving that, preserving that, having that a part of who we are today is just as important, or more important than any modern views, values, whatever you want to throw at this to change this. Now, that's not to say, of course, I'm going to go off on my conclusion here. That sounded like a conclusion. It's not quite there. Other state flags have changed recently. Utah, this isn't even their most recent flag. This is their flag, you know, the seal on a blue field. And somebody was reading through the law and the description, and they discovered, well, the shield is supposed to be white. So the actual current flag is this, but with a white shield. That's scheduled to change. They did a commission or something, and it's changing. And but they're retaining, there's a beehive, stands for industry and hard work and the whole thing. That's going to remain. And so there's an evolution there, and they didn't change the state seal. They're just changing the flag again to be more simple and more identifiable, more recognizable. Now, this one you're going to recognize, or at least part of it. Maybe you saw it there in the corner. That's the state flag of Minnesota. The state flag of Mississippi. That's the former flag. They changed that a number of years ago. I think for obvious reasons. If you tell me that's racist or problematic or offensive, that I understand a lot more than that. This one's easy. Now, they did come up with a proposal a number of years ago where, like, the American flag, they took out the Union Jack and they put in stars in place of it. There was a proposal for this. Mississippi was the 20th state to join the Union. They took out the Confederate battle flag there, and they had 20 stars with a one big white star in the middle for Mississippi. It was a really nice design. I liked it much better than what they ended up coming up with. That one failed a referendum, and they just recently initiated another movement to change it, which did pass. It's got a magnolia flower in the middle, and it's the Magnolia State, and so there's symbolism there, but I don't care for it very well. The last one that I've got here, so this is not the current flag. This is the last flag for the state of Georgia. The previous flag was this one. Like Mississippi, it featured the Confederate battle flag on there. Not good for fairly obvious reasons, and but they put the state seal on there, and then to tie to their history, they put small images of the previous state flags on there. And well, that one only lasted about a year. So for anybody that if you're thinking, oh, they're going to change the Minnesota state flag and we can't do anything about it, it's done, it's over. Well, they passed this one in Georgia, and about a year later they moved to this design. Now this is basically the same as the first flag of the Confederacy, the national flag, but only it adds the Georgia arms, or part of the Georgia arms seal in the middle there. But that's a beautiful flag, design-wise. But nothing's set in stone. Just because they pass a new flag doesn't mean you can't, write your legislator, call your legislator, email, text, whatever. You could share my video and kind of explain the history of where the Minnesota state flag came from. There is a lineage. There is a reason that I think that it should be kept. And again, they may get rid of it. Doesn't mean they can't bring it back. Doesn't mean they can't change it to something else. It's not over just because they say it's over.